Hello, my name is Joroge Thuo, and I would like to discuss the energy crisis in Zimbabwe. Specifically, I would like to discuss some of the available financing options for consideration by the Zimbabwe policymakers, the private sector, as well as the international development community, given the quest to get everyone on board with regards to sustainable development goals. Zimbabwe has been going through electricity crisis over a prolonged period, and this has been a major setback to the economy and any efforts towards economic recovery. This has been occasioned majorly by two main issues. First, demand that has for several years outstripped supply, and secondly, the aging and failing infrastructure. Currently, Zimbabwe generates about 940 megawatts of power against 2,500 which are required, creating a huge deficit. The infrastructure in the country is operating below capacity. For example, the Hwange power station is operating at less than half its capacity. In addition, only about 40% of the population is connected to electricity. Further, there is a huge and heavy dependence on high carbon sources of energy, and we are talking here about coal and diesel. With that being the case, why would the different actors want to participate? Why would the government, why would the private sector, why would the development institutions and community want to participate? The government, the policymakers, and the public would want to participate in this discussion because of the economic decline being experienced, high levels of unemployment, high costs of production, quality of life of the citizen is declining. The boat is taking in water and something needs to be done. On the other hand, the private sector would want to participate because of the possibility of making good returns given the demand-supply situation, which creates an opportunity for investors to reap. For those who have already invested, the decreasing wealth due to high cost of production is a reason to discuss and to participate. High cost also translates into high prices, thus reducing competitiveness of the Zimbabwe goods and products, both locally and in the international markets. The development institution and international community would want to participate because, number one, the consideration for sustainable development, but more importantly, Zimbabwe relies heavily on high carbon sources of energy, which is not in tandem with the sustainable development goals. With this potential, why is there not any participation? There are several reasons. I will mention two main obstacles for now, although there are a myriad of them. One is the legal and regulatory environment. Secondly, the energy and electricity sector structures are an obstacle. With reference to the legal and regulatory environment, the legal and regulatory environment is littered with policies, regulations, and laws that are not conducive for business. It is important to point out that while some of these laws, policies, and regulations have been meant for some noble reasons, for instance, encouraging increased participation and ownership by the Zimbabwean citizen, the said regulations have had, on the same breath, stopped and discouraged internal as well as external involvement, even causing disinvestment in Zimbabwe. The said regulations are seen to increase risk, and investors are wary of putting their hard-earned cash into such investments. Also note, there are political as well as quasi-judicial decisions that make the situation unpredictable, and lack of predictability in the environment is certainly a deterrent to investment. With regards to energy sector structures being an obstacle, besides the regulatory authority, the structure is more monopolistic. We're talking about ZESA Holdings, which holds others, meaning that there is no space for other actors and competition. As well, there is no space for additional capital given that these are closed institutions, public institutions. We can also talk about the inefficiencies associated with such monopolistic institutions. So, what are the solutions to address these obstacles? How does the government, for instance, play into this? There is need for predictability. There is need to strengthen legal and judicial structures to limit external interference and allow consistent application of law. The government needs to reconsider some of the policies, laws, and regulations, e.g., the indigenization laws and the ensuing regulations, so that they do not stop or discourage investments into the sector. This way, independent power producers can come in other investors can confidently put in their cash without worrying on the question of giving it up to others at no cost. Thirdly, I think there is need to restructure and reform the electricity sector. I suggest through 1, privatization. Here we can get in more capital coming in from private sources. But also, this would create efficiencies through the change of ownership and the management structure if required. The other way to restructure is to consider liberalization. This would increase competition and ensure efficiency. On the other hand, it will increase infrastructural investment. On the other hand, the MDDS, development institution, and the private sector would come in through capacity initiatives. We are talking about providing guidance on legal and institutional reforms in the energy sector to the government, especially with reference to the case of privatization and liberalization, should those options be considered. I think the multilateral development banks and other international institutions can also come in through capital initiatives. Here we are talking about leveraging capital to incentivize investors. Secondly, provision of guarantees to mitigate risks. We're also talking about provision of concessional loans to the private sector who are willing to invest in power production. It should be noted that the return on investments on energy take longer periods, and investors need to be cautioned if they are to borrow to invest in such projects. These actors can also be involved in spurring up the capital markets. Number 1, by providing advisory services on innovating financing for the energy sector, pegged upon their experiences in other areas where they have been worked in other countries. They can also encourage cross-listing in other international markets to tap to other capital sources. Finally, lastly, and not leastly, providing concessional loans to private citizens who would want to invest in the institutions that exist if the privatization options is of consideration. I think some of these solutions would be of use in addressing these challenges, but many other options may need to be considered as well. Thank you.